Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast, Finding Your Flow. I'm so excited to have you here. So, I want to welcome you to our new season of this transformational podcast, and it's called My Intuition Made Me Do It. I'm your host, Jennifer Jane Young, and I'm here to ignite inspiration within you. I'm the author of Say Yes to Your Yes, How to Trust Your Gut and Take the Leap, and the visionary behind the School of Intuitive Leadership. I've dedicated my life to empowering individuals to trust their intuition and lead their lives from that powerful inner wisdom. Through my work as an international speaker and intuitive leadership advisor, I've witnessed the transformative power of following one's intuition firsthand with entrepreneurs and organizations around the world. This season, we're diving deep into the stories of people who dare to listen to their inner voice and take the leap. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of intuition, sharing captivating experiences that will reignite your belief in the incredible guidance within you. Get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. It's time to embrace the clarity and courage that comes from trusting your intuition. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired into action. Your dreams are waiting. Let's make them a reality together. All right. So Karlyn, thank you so much for joining us today on My Intuition Made Me Do It. Um, I got the luxury of just hearing a little sneak peek of your story before, and I'm super excited for us to share it. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. Um, the first question I want you to answer. So the title of the podcast is My Intuition Made Me Do It. And so my intuition made me ... What is the thing that your intuition made you do that you want to share today?
Yeah. First of all, I love it. I love that prompt. Um, and so my intuition made me close down a business that I had for almost a decade that was successful and pivot in an entirely new direction with absolutely no guarantee that things would work out, just an internal knowing that that was where I had to be. So, more specifically, that looks like I had a landscaping and landscape design company for about 10 years. I have a degree in horticulture and landscape design. I managed large scale uh, horticulture projects for commercial places like country clubs, and I designed and installed our city Christmas tree every year at the botanical gardens, just really fun things like that. I had a lot of fun with it. I do still love physical labor. I love design work. It was just kind of a mix for everything that like my personality needs to stay awake during the day. I need lots of stimulation. Um, anyways, and I got a tan. Um,
Good.
that was always,
Always good.
yeah. So what happened was is that it fell out of alignment for me. And when you fall out of alignment for something, it doesn't feel good. It feels like, wait a second, I thought we had a deal here, universe. Like, this is what I came to do. This is what I'm doing. But I went to go get my yoga teacher's certificate. I went through this like 8-month long process. It was a spiritual experience for 8 months. My teacher is just this magical person. You could not walk out of it the same person that you went into it. There's like not a
Mhm.
chance. And I honestly did not intend to teach. I just went because I wanted to study yoga at a deeper level and be around her more. Um, and, by the end of it, I was like, oh no, I got to teach, like this is something that I'm really good at. And I love doing. And so I started leading retreats and pop up yoga, working with people. And from that developed ongoing coaching. I didn't know I was coaching. I called it mentorship. And then as I learned more about coaching, I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And so just kind of through the back door on accident, I started coaching women. Initially, it was on intuitive eating and body image work, because that's a lot of my yoga classes were surrounding that as well.
Mm.
Um, and so I tried to do both for a little while. And then um, the point of no return for me, like I had been in that like place of friction of, you know, the universe changing its mind and me being like, what the hey? I'd been in that for a little while, and then trying to do both, wrestle it, and I was oh, I know what the term is, the sunk cost fallacy. So that
Oh.
the idea is like, in finances, like if you make an investment and it goes south, our brains think, oh, I can't not keep investing in it because I've already invested so much, right? And that's the same thing that was going on in my head with my business. I was like, I have a degree in it. I've invested so much. I have a whole team. I have all this equipment. I have, all these plans. I have all these clients that I love. I have to keep doing it or it's all a waste. And that's a fallacy because you're not getting the outcome, the return on investment like you
Mm.
would want, right? So, anyways, I liken it to like me pushing a boulder up a hill. Like I just got to keep doing it because I've
Yeah.
been doing it. And one day I was sitting there paying bills for my landscaping business, and all of a sudden I realized like I had this immense pain um, just across my chest. Putting it down, it felt like a ton of bricks were on it, and that's when I just had that aha moment, like, nothing is worth this kind of stress. And
Right.
I have been praying for direction from the universe. My gut was telling me to pivot fully into coaching, but again, I had no guarantee. And I had already had this other business. And so I was praying for direction. And I feel like, the universe or God put, a ton of bricks on my chest to say, like, hey, this this direction's a no, right?
Mm.
And so I made the decision. And, many people thought I was nutsos. Um, but like for me, that was the first time that I really like dropped in and plugged into my truth in that way. And I had to block out other people and just say, like, no, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, because for the first time in my entire life, I feel like I'm at home. I'm an excellent coach. I am intuitive, and I'm here to help women and not just sling plants. So that's
Mm.
intuition made me do it story. I've gone on to now I coach. I help women start and grow their businesses, scale their businesses, but we do it in an aligned way so that
Mm.
they can avoid the bricks on the chest situation and the burnout, and have a business that supports their life rather than a business that's on life support all the time.
Oh, that's so good. A business that supports their life versus being on life support. I need to pull that out as a quote. That is really powerful. There's so many things that you said that feel I want to kind of just highlight. The first is I teach this a lot, and I know you and I both really believe in like the embodied part of this journey, like that those bricks you felt on your chest. I always tell people your intuition is going to speak to you through your body. That's the point of having a physical human body, right? It's like that's where we're going to feel it in different ways for different people. Um, and I know when I had one of my last like huge pivots, actually ended up in a nervous breakdown. But again, it was my body that first like kind of exploded. It was like this volcano effect that happened in my physical body. So just that slowing down, which I encourage people to do all the time, so that you can actually feel what's going on, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't get smacked over the head at some point, you know. So
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that. I think that's so important. And when you were talking at the beginning about, this idea of like I've invested so much, I can't stop now. It made me realize that there's so many different scenarios in life where this can happen. Like even in a marriage, I've invested so much time into this marriage. I need to just keep going and pushing the boulder up the hill, or a job or whatever it is. And I
Yeah.
think there's so many people that are just going against the current. moving forward, even when it doesn't feel good anymore because of this concept.
Yeah.
Um, and I have chills as I'm saying this. I'm really, really happy that you shared that, because I think that if there's one thing that people pull out of this, like that piece is really important. Um, so I'm curious from your perspective in this whole intuitive leap that you took, what do you feel is the most important lesson that you learned from this particular intuitive leap?
Um, the most important lesson would be um, giving yourself the permission to pivot, right? The the thing of it is it's tied to what you were just talking about. Um, our identities can we're constantly making up our identities, and
Mm,
it's actually not a fixed thing. But because we are human beings, we're always trying to find certainty. And so when we paint ourselves a certain way and in this certainty, the idea of pivoting feels so scary and wrong because it feels like a rejection of self, right? And then in addition to that, you outsource your um, de- decision making, right?
mm,
And so the idea of pivoting into this new identity, we then search outside of ourselves for direction. And even if the people are well meaning, many times they're going to want to help keep you safe, right? And safe actually could be replaced with small, right? Because when we are being intuitively led, that's like we're growing into and expanding into that next level of ourselves, which always feels uncomfortable. And so if you have that anxiety and your loved one sees you in fear and saying like this, they're going to want to protect you and buffer you and say like, let's stay in the safe route, right? And so giving yourself the permission to pivot, not outsourcing that decision, insourcing it, right? And just deciding like I can make up my identity today any way I want, right? This is who I am now, and just stepping into it.
oh, I love that about not outsourcing that decision. We it's so natural, right, for us to reach outside of ourselves to try to make these super important life decisions. And yeah, what a beautiful lesson to share in all of this. And it's also a reminder of like to empower ourselves to know that like, no, we actually have the answer. We are fully capable of making the decision, saying yes to our yes, and then taking the step forward. Um, and it's not like you said, it's like that safe space when you say yes to your yes, or you follow your gut, however you want to call it, and you move forward, you're moving into so much unknown. And that's, you were talking about before, like you didn't have any guarantees. Anytime someone's like, I have no guarantees of what's going to happen, I would say you are on the right track. You are on the right path, because that is where expansion happens. That is where growth happens. And that's where we get to experience something new instead of just staying in the same cyclical experiences our whole lives that become like put us on life support, like you said. Um,
Yeah. And also, like, are no guarantees.
right.
So, like, if there's, I mean, there was many lessons to learn during the pandemic, but if there was one lesson that, would apply to what we're talking about right now is you know, that everybody had this idea that their job was so certain, right? And so secure. And that's not what was demonstrated.
Right.
And so, like, you might think what you have is a sure bet. And many times, like, maybe it does work out that way, but the only truth and constant in life is change.
Yeah.
And so, like, to hang my hat on this idea that this is more certain because it feels quote unquote safe, right, is a fallacy.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's an unfulfilling one too.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'd rather just trust the fact that things are going to change. They always evolve and change.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm going to use that for me instead of against me.
Mm. I love that.
Let's just take a moment to pause, breathe, and soak in the goodness of today's story.
I hope it's starting to inspire you to say yes to your yes, trust your gut, and take your next leap forward. If so, I have something amazing to support you as you take your next leap. I'm inviting you to join my 12-week journey to intuitive mastery called Unlock Your Inner Wisdom so that you can start living the life you're yearning for right now. I'm also throwing in 2 bonuses for you: a digital copy of my book, Say Yes to Your Yes, How to Trust Your Gut and Take the Leap, and a 1-month complimentary access to my flow experience to start creating flow from the inside out. Because when life flows through you, abundance flows to you. Head over to jenniferjaneyoung.com/sayyes to get all of your goodies. And tell me, so we spoke a little bit about like kind of how the intuitive nudge felt for you. It ended up being like it started with like some whispers, kind of like Oprah says, and then it gets louder and louder. And then the louder part for you was like the bricks on the chest. Um, what was the messy middle like? Like that place in between from when you're like, you made the decision, you took the leap, and then today, let's say, obviously, there's always
Right.
like that transition period, right? Where, and that's
Mhm.
the part that people are the most scared of is like, oh my God, like how is this going to feel? What is this going to look like? Will I be able to handle it? What was the experience like for you in that messy middle?
Um, it was messy. There was a lot of, tears, a lot of grief around, that past identity and that, when you make a change like that, I always say it's like you're poking holes in your future, right? Because you had these things written out, the story written out already. And so, like, that's why a breakup can hurt so much because you're like, oh, I thought we were going to X, Y, or Z. And so now my future looks different than I thought. And so it's like, grieving it and then, you know, um, having, embracing uncertainty doesn't always feel so great.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, with that came a lot of anxiety and worry and, growth.
Yeah.
And, the messy middle is like that growth point, right? Where it's like, the, pardon my French, but like the shit or get off the pot point, like the point where either I say I'm all in or I'm only partly in and then I torture myself.
Right.
So it's like I made the decision. I'm like, no, I turn towards this 100%, whatever it takes, however long it takes. And I remember my coach saying a long time ago, success becomes inevitable when you decide you'll never give up. And
Mhm.
to me, that blew my mind. It's like so simple. It's like painfully simple, but it blew my mind. I was like, oh, like, I guess that's true. It's so true. And so, like, that's what I did. And, for me, the messy middle was, it was fraught with overworking and, lack of sleep and stressing out, being graspy in sales calls, like having plenty of like no shows or and mistakes, lots of fails, like that's what the messy middle is. I don't want to promise anybody that like you're going to make this decision and you're going to step in and all of a sudden you're going to lead this like laptop luxury lifestyle or
Yeah.
something like that, like Instagram would have you believe. uh,
Right.
but the truth of it is that even though it was painful and messy many times, a lot of the time, I also knew like I was becoming me,
Mm.
right? And the way that I managed all of that, right? I was not alone. So I have like a whole team around me. I've got, my coaches, therapy, right? My best friends who like the company that you keep is very important. So my people in my circle are not going to be there to like co-sign my bullshit and say like, oh yeah, maybe you should, hang your hat and go, like it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, tomorrow's another day, right? Like they're
Yeah.
just going to keep, encouraging me and lifting me up. And luckily, I'm very fortunate to have supportive family. So I leaned on that. And I also am a very spiritual person. So a
Mm.
lot of prayer, lot of ritual, a lot of surrender, and trust. And just getting up every day and renewing and doing my mindset and energetics work. And, you know, today, like my first year, I made 100K. Okay. I,
Wow.
yeah, it's like, yay. But also, I wish you could have seen how I felt on the inside. It's not worth that. You know, it's not worth it. And so the second year, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just try to recreate 100K, but I'm going to do it in a way where like I actually like myself and I like this
Mhm.
life, that I'm building. And that's like what I help people do now is like,
Yeah.
I can teach people how to make money. That's not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is, or can be, detaching yourself from that and understanding what your personal limitations are at the level that you're at so that you can grow through it and do it like in a loving and compassionate way instead of like me the first year just like bullishly pushing my way through.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think sometimes when we start, we're kind of in survival mode, right? We're just like, oh, I need, and it's kind of like, I need to make this work to prove that I didn't like mess this whole thing up and make the worst decision
100%.
of my life. So,
Yeah.
um,
Everybody's watching.
everybody's watching if
Yeah.
I fail. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Um, so this leads me to my next question, which is always a scary one for me to reflect on myself, and also an encouraging one to be like, don't stop listening to your yes.
Mm.
Um, how do you think things would look and feel like today if you had not said yes? Like, who would you be today if you had not followed that intuitive nudge and you would still be doing what you were doing before in the life you were before?
Um, it would be, I would be trudging,
Mm.
right? It would be a plodding forward, instead of like um, a saunter, you know, like not like that every day is a saunter, but it's like the energy of that where it's like, oh, I have to, right? Like I gotta do this, every spring, even though daffodils are my favorite flower, as soon as I start seeing them, I panic attacks,
Wow.
right? Because here comes the craziness of this job, this business that I decided to have.
Yeah.
And so I would just be in that cycle, wash, rinse, repeat. And, I probably would have expanded and grown. Um, but, you know, at the expense of um, my fulfillment, right? And I probably would have been trying to weave that in some way. Like I always was. Like I had training program inside of my company that really helped like facilitate growth in my employees. Like I was always trying to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I would be miserable or anything, but I don't think that my heart would be singing and filled with possibility.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, in all of these stories that we're sharing in this season is just inviting people to sit with that, like what would my life look like in 5 years if I continued as is?
Mm-hmm.
And what would it look like if I stepped into the unknown, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's a personal choice for everybody, but just to allow yourself to sit with that idea and reflect on what is it, like you said, the word fulfillment, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
What is the life or the path that is going to really fulfill me, that is going to nurture me, that is going to get me excited to wake up every day, even if it's not guaranteed, like as
That's the fulfilling part. That's the conundrum,
yeah,
right? Is that we want to avoid the risk, but the risk is the reward itself
yeah,
because it's who we're becoming in the process, not like who we became,
yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So for me, like if I am not allowed to grow and not allowed to self-express and all these things that are so important to me,
Hmm.
like I feel like a little wilting flower.
Right.
And that's why I can't work for other people. I've known
Hmm.
that my whole life. Like I don't like to be told what to do. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm creative and smart. And so I want to be able to activate on my ideas. And, you know, from my experience working under people, that's not always, rewarded. Um, unless you're, you go on and like that's like an advanced degree that you get into. But I was gonna say something as far as like what you were saying, like sitting with what would it look like in 5 years. And like one of the questions I ask people is like, okay, well, um, what is the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
Right. So I always say, look at the monster under the bed, because so many times it's like that'll paralyze us and we
Yeah.
don't even like give ourselves the benefit of the doubt of how we would handle that. So
Yeah.
like what's the worst case scenario? Let's play it out. Okay. So let's say, Karlyn, you pivoted, you and after this, you closed down your other business and you completely failed and you lost money. What would you do then? Right.
Right.
Well, I would just go get a job, or I would start back up my other company, or, and it's kind of like, oh, it's actually not as bad as I thought. And then like, okay, well then what's the best case scenario? Well,
Mhm.
I start this company and it soars. I do really well. I feel happy and fulfilled, and it grows and I'm able to like fund these other areas of my life. And then to me, the question becomes, well, am I willing to risk that worst case scenario to possibly create this best case scenario? And
Yeah.
that's really the decision that's at stake.
Yeah. I love that reflection. And to be honest, like I think it's very rare that the worst case scenario happens. And I think we have more chances of um being closer to the best case scenario, or at least in the middle. So I love that reflection. It's a really great way to de-dramatize the whole path ahead that people see. And it's also, I tell people this all the time, it's always and only about just that one next step. That's the only thing you need to figure out. And the next one will be revealed, and then the next one will be revealed as long as you keep listening to your intuition. So,
I love
um,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, we can project into the future as far as we want, but like we already said, it's those things aren't guaranteed. It's
Mhm.
nice to plan for things, right? So that you can set yourself up for success. But like you just said, is just focus on the next right thing.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly it's all going to reveal itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we kind of touched on a few things, but I would love to know, like, what would you, for someone who's listening to your story and is really relating and like, oh my God, I need to do this thing. I need to pivot. I need to trust my gut and take the leap. What would you say is the most important piece of wisdom that you would love to leave people with?
Well, I think it would be to understand, to take time and understand that um, you're constantly creating your reality that you're in.
Hmm.
You're the captain of your ship. And empowerment means to me realizing that you have choice in every situation. And what do you want to actively choose for yourself?
Mm.
So reclaiming that power now, and then embracing and accepting and deciding like what you're willing to feel in order to create a life that you actually want, right?
Mm.
Because right now you're feeling anxiety. I'm just guessing if this is the person you're feeling anxiety, fear, you feel, maybe depressed, you feel suppressed, all these things. Well, you're already feeling bad.
I know, right?
It's like, well, are you willing to, like, let's say you create this other life and, you know, are you willing to risk feeling that again? Are you willing to risk feeling, embarrassment, shame, disappointment? Like these are all the things that we don't do things out of fear of how we're going to feel. So if
Yeah.
you decide like, oh, I'm willing to feel that because I want to become the person who went through it and created what she wanted, it deflates it,
Hmm.
and then like when you do feel it, you're like, oh yeah, I knew that this was a possibility
Yeah.
and it's okay. I'm safe.
Yeah.
So I hope that was cogent.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Um, and finally, before we end, if someone is like, oh my God, I need to connect with Karlyn. I need to work with her. I need they just like being magnetized towards you. Where would be the best place that they could find you, connect with you? Even anything like a starting point that you feel like you could give them. I would love to
Sure.
share that.
Um, so I'm on Instagram at Dear Wildheart, and there's underscores in between each. You can check out my website, dearwildheart.com, and then you can just email me directly, Karlyn, which is Karlyn at dearwildheart.com. And that's actually something that I forgot to mention is that my business name, right, Dear Wildheart, to me, is a call to your true self,
Mm,
the one that's speaking to you in your intuition, right? And
yeah.
so the reason why I named it that is that every time I write it or say it, I'm speaking directly to that in you.
Yeah. I love it. I love the name. It's so beautiful. And so we're gonna grab all of these links and put them in the show notes as well so people can go back and find them and click through. I'm so grateful that you came to share your story. You have such a beautiful story. Like I just feel like the whole time I was just receiving it like a gentle, I don't know, it was just really nice to hear the story. And I think there's so many people that are going to relate to it. So thank you for being here with us. I'm
Absolutely.
happy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait to share this episode and inviting people to just go find you and maybe that's their first or next step is like reach out to Karlyn and see how you can get started on this journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even if it's just following me on Instagram and you can see, you know, my story or, just even signing up for a coffee chat. Or if you're like, yeah, let's go, I want to roll, you can help me, we can get on a consult. But, um, you can lurk for a while or jump all in.
Right. I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, let's just take a moment to take in that story. My wish is that it inspires you into the aligned action that you are really ready for. You also don't have to do this alone. Just like my guests have shared about all the incredible people that have supported them along their journey, we are here for you too. If you're ready to uplevel your personal leadership, take big leaps in your life, or take that next leap on your entrepreneurial journey, join us at the School of Intuitive Leadership or in the Flow Experience so that you can experience more ease, flow, joy, abundance, and live in your full brilliance and wake up each day to the life that you really want. Find out more at jenniferjaneyoung.com or at theschoolofintuitiveleadership.com. And participate in this movement with us by sharing an episode that deeply inspired you and leaving us a review. I can't wait to see you on the next episode.